Ever wondered why characters in horror films seem to make the worst decisions at the worst times? A question that has puzzled audiences for decades. It's a genre where the smartest characters suddenly lose all common sense when faced with a sinister force. This is a common trope of horror films that we've all come to know and, in a twisted way, love. It's the moment when a character decides to venture alone into the creepy basement, or when they choose to split up in a haunted house, despite clear signs of danger. These head-scratching choices not only heighten the suspense but also make us shout at our screens, "What were you thinking?" Today we're going to explore this fascinating phenomenon. We've compiled a list, a countdown of sorts, of the top 10 moments where characters in horror movies made decisions that were, well, less than intelligent. Without further ado, let's dive into the countdown of the top 10 dumbest decisions in horror movies. At number 10, we have the classic splitting up decision. This choice is a perennial favorite, a horror film trope that just won't die. You've seen it countless times. A group of terrified individuals, their numbers dwindling, decide the best course of action is to split up, to divide and conquer. But conquer what? The inevitable darkness, the lurking creature, the unseen terror? In reality, it's a decision that only serves to isolate and expose. It's not just illogical, it's a recipe for disaster. Splitting up in a horror movie is like volunteering to be served on a silver platter to the monster du jour. It's hard to fathom why this decision is so popular, but it's a horror cliché that keeps us on the edge of our seats, screaming at our screens, "Don't go into that room alone." So remember, stick together or risk becoming the monster's next meal. Coming in at number 9, we have the infamous "let's investigate that strange noise" decision. You know the one, right? The chilling scenario that sends shivers down our spines. Yet we can't help but watch as our beloved characters venture into the unknown. It's the allure of curiosity, the irresistible pull of the unexplained, that often becomes the downfall in horror movies. The allure is understandable. After all, we're hardwired to seek answers, to explore the uncharted, to solve mysteries. But in a horror movie setting, this could be a fatal mistake. Those eerie, unidentifiable sounds, they're rarely an invitation to a surprise party. More often than not, they're a forewarning of impending doom. Yet time and time again, we see characters disregarding their safety, propelled by their curiosity. It's a classic horror trope, but one that never fails to induce suspense and terror. The lesson here: if you hear a strange noise, run the other way. Number 8 features the ill-advised, "let's hide in the basement attic" decision. Now this one is a classic. Our horror movie heroes, in a moment of sheer panic, decide to take shelter in the basement or the attic. They slam the door shut, lean against it, and breathe heavily, thinking they're safe. But let's think about this, shall we? Basements and attics are usually dead-end locations. They offer no alternative escape routes. If the monster, murderer, or ghost finds you, there's no back door to slip out of. You're trapped, and your options for defense are usually limited to whatever junk you can find lying around. And let's not forget, these spaces are often dark, dusty, and full of creepy old things that are perfect for a sudden scare. So, not only are you trapped, but you're also in a setting that's tailor-made for horror. Always remember, choose your hiding spots wisely. Scene script. 7th place goes to the "let's not call the police" decision. Imagine this. You're in a spooky old mansion, or maybe a cabin in the woods, and strange things start happening. Doors creak open, lights flicker, and eerie noises echo through the halls. Instead of reaching for your phone to dial 911, you decide to investigate the source of these disturbances yourself. Now we see this time and again in horror flicks, and it's always a terrible idea. Why is that, you ask? Well, the characters might think they're avoiding unnecessary panic, or maybe they're trying to prove their bravery. But let's be real, folks. When you're dealing with malevolent spirits or serial killers, bravery alone won't cut it. You need the authorities, the professionals, those trained to handle such situations. So remember, if you ever find yourself in a horror movie scenario, don't play the hero. When in doubt, always call for help. At number 6, we have the "let's not turn on the lights" decision. Now this is a classic that we've all seen time and time again. The chilling suspense of a character creeping around in the dark, despite the clear presence of danger, is a staple in horror cinema. But let's be real for a moment. Why would anyone choose to stumble around in the pitch black when they could simply flick a switch and illuminate their surroundings? It's as if the idea of light being a deterrent to whatever evil lurks in the shadows is an alien concept. The decision to shun the safety of light in favor of darkness is not only foolish, but it also increases the risk of tripping over something, or worse, walking straight into the arms of the monster. So the next time you find yourself in a potentially horrifying situation, remember this number 6 dumb decision. Keep the lights on, it's safer that way. The 5th spot goes to the let's ignore the creepy warning decision. Now this one boggles the mind. When a weathered old sign says don't go in the woods, or a local legend warns of a vengeful spirit haunting a deserted mansion, you'd think it would be enough to make anyone turn tail. But no, our brave or perhaps foolhardy characters press on, oblivious to the doom that inevitably awaits them. This decision is a staple in horror movies, contributing to the suspense and thrill. But let's step back and think about it. In the real world, if a sign says beware of the dog, you wouldn't just waltz into the yard, would you? The same principle applies here. It's almost as if the characters are challenging fate, inviting the very horror they should be avoiding. Perhaps it's bravado, curiosity, or just plain stupidity. Whatever the reason, it's a decision that seldom ends well. When you see a warning, heed it. Number 4 features the let's not arm ourselves decision. It's baffling how often our beloved horror movie characters, despite being in imminent danger, decide to go without any form of self-defense. Picture this. You're in a haunted house or being stalked by a supernatural entity. Your heart is pounding, the fear is palpable, and every shadow seems to be reaching out for you. Despite being in this frightening situation, you decide not to grab that kitchen knife or that baseball bat or any object that could potentially save your life. This scenario is so common in horror films that it's almost a staple. It's as if the characters have an unspoken agreement to make themselves as vulnerable as possible. This lack of self-defense preparation is not just illogical, but it's also quite frustrating for the viewers who are practically screaming at their screens, urging the characters to arm themselves. Always be prepared, you never know what's lurking around the corner. The 3rd dumbest decision is the let's not finish off the monster decision. This is a classic trope that has been used time and time again in horror films. You've seen it, right? The protagonist, having seemingly defeated the monster, turns their back and walks away, leaving the creature lying there, presumed dead. But we know better, don't we? This lapse in judgment often leads to the monster's resurgence, stronger and more terrifying than before. It's a decision that baffles us, the viewers, as we scream at our screens, finish it off, make sure it's dead. But alas, our pleas fall on deaf ears. And so the cycle continues. The monster revives, the protagonist is caught off guard, and we're left shaking our heads at the sheer folly of it all. It's a decision that's as frustrating as it is dumb, and it's a staple of horror films. When you have the chance, always finish off the monster. 2nd place goes to the let's go back for the fallen friend decision. This choice, while noble in sentiment, often leads to disastrous consequences in the twisted world of horror. It's a common trope that has our hearts pounding in dread as we watch our beloved characters against all reason return to the lion's den. In the realm of horror, safety is a scarce commodity. Every corner hides a potential nightmare, every shadow a lurking menace. Yet, our protagonists, driven by loyalty, friendship, or sheer desperation, decide to venture back into the heart of danger, often with fatal results. This decision represents a classic conflict between emotion and survival instinct. On one hand, leaving a friend behind feels inhuman, a betrayal of the highest order. On the other, the instinct to survive, to escape the deadly clutches of the monster, urges them to flee. Ultimately, these scenes serve as a grim reminder of the harsh realities of horror. Sometimes it's better to run and live to fight another day. And the number 1 dumbest decision in horror movies is the let's stay in the haunted house decision. Now this is a classic, a trope that's so overused that it's become a punchline. Yet we still see it time and time again. Picture this. Strange noises in the dead of night, doors creaking open on their own, and objects mysteriously moving around. The characters are visibly terrified, but do they pack their bags and leave? No, they decide to stay, often under the most flimsy of pretexts. It's a decision that baffles the mind. You'd think survival instinct would kick in, urging them to flee from the palpable danger. Instead, they hunker down and try to solve the haunting, as if they're stuck in some twisted version of a detective novel. This decision is not just dumb, it's downright absurd. It defies logic and common sense, making it the reigning champion of dumb decisions in horror movies. When the house is haunted, it's time to move. And there you have it, the top 10 dumbest decisions in horror movies. From choosing to explore the creepy basement alone, to deciding it's a great idea to split up in a haunted house, these scenes have given us some of the most face-palm moments in horror cinema. But let's not forget the real lessons hiding behind these terrifying tales. Number 10 taught us the importance of trusting our gut feelings. Number 9 reminded us to always be prepared for the worst. The 8th decision highlighted the value of sticking together, especially when faced with unknown dangers. 7 and 6 were all about the dangers of curiosity and taking unnecessary risks. Then we had numbers 5 to 2, which all emphasized the importance of common sense and logical thinking in life-threatening situations. And of course, the number 1 dumbest decision reinforced the golden rule: never, ever ignore clear warning signs. Remember, in a horror movie scenario, it's always better to be safe than sorry. Until next time, stay safe and keep away from haunted houses.